mode, and that should
Ready?
get us set. Yep, ready to go.
All right, we are recording and here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the No Limit Selling Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders on how they grow revenue, how they get leads, how they create sales, because the blood of any business is sales. And there's lots of companies that have great salespeople, but no qualified leads. I mean, the system can be broken in many places, but I know someone that can help out. Today, I have the privilege of having William Wang. He is the Chief Marketing Strategist for Growth Labs. Will, welcome to the program.
Mark, thank you so much for having me on. Can't wait to dive into this.
Brilliant. So, the top of the funnel is where we need to get leads coming in. And let's start there. If you've got somebody coming to you starting a brand new business, why don't you pick what that business could be, and we'll use that as the example throughout the show. And then let's talk about how you'd find their target audience, how you'd get leads, and let's build this company from, let's say, 0 to $10 million over the course of the next few years. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. So that's obviously a very broad category there. So why don't we use a B2B software business as an example, just because it's top of mind and I can pull out some numbers. What I find is that obviously this is a sales podcast. We're going to talk about sales. And one of the things I always find is across different levels of revenue for a business, you start to get this kind of angst between sales and marketing, right? Sales are always like, leads suck, and marketing's like, no, you're not working the leads properly. So I think for me, it's been really interesting to see some of my clients on their journey from 0 to up to $50 or $100 million a year. And I think the way I like to break it down is, depending on where you're at, the salesperson, or the salespeople, I should say, is going to be very different at those levels. So at 0, it should really be the founder as the salesperson, right? No one's going to evangelize a product as much as them. No one's going to have the passion and the drive, or even understand what it is they're trying to do, like the founders will. So at that point, it's literally the founders going out and pounding on people's doors, finding out if people want to solve the solution they're trying to solve for. And this is where, marketing at top of funnel doesn't really matter so much at the very beginning, because literally it's, how do we get sales? You go straight for the bottom of the funnel, talk to people who you think are your ideal clients, or the theory that you've got, because obviously when you actually go to market and do the marketing, that might change. But at 0, as a founder, you've just got to do what doesn't scale. And that means having a conversation, or a sales conversation, every single day as a minimum. So that's obviously at the very beginning.
So let's say you've got the business started, and you've got $100,000 in revenue. You got some programmers. You got the chief sales guy who's the owner. And now it's like, hey, we need to hire a few more salespeople and maybe get marketing involved as well. Set up a marketing department. Take us to that stage.
Yeah, that's where you have to start really aligning the culture between sales and marketing. So the best companies I've seen that I've worked with, these unicorn companies, but here, both in Australia, as you can probably tell from the accent, I'm Australian, both in Australia and also in the US, the unicorns that we've worked with who have gotten funding, hit hypergrowth, and just really scaled really, really quickly. What the founders or the investors or the advisors, whoever it is, what they've been really good at is holding the marketing and the sales team really, really closely together. So the analogy is, the analogy I like to use is kind of like you've got two magnets, and I've got a bunch of magnets here. It's kind of like, if you have opposing forces, you're going to have to work really, really hard to get them close to each other, and they're never going to, attract. But if you flip it around the right way, you have magnets that just magnetize to each other. So as a founder or an investor or an advisor, I believe the best ones I've seen, they've been able to switch it around so that sales actually want to talk to marketing, and marketing actually want to talk to sales. So that becomes a cultural thing.
So I think, from my point of view, I think actually sales belongs within marketing. Like, marketing is the superset and sales is a subset of it. And so marketing needs to take the responsibility of, we understand the market, we understand the customer, and this is the solution that they want. This is how they want to be sold. Sales guys gals go in and sell it in this way. And either they're successful or they're not. So let's say they are
Mm.
successful, everyone's happy. And then marketing comes back in and says, okay, how do we continue the relationship? How do we deepen into the account? And the tip of the spear is sales. But let's say sales is not successful, then it's marketing's job with sales to diagnose what the issue is and resolve it. But in most companies, like you said, it's sales on one side and marketing on the other, and the finger of blame is going back and forth. Your leads suck, and then marketing is not. They're like, you suck, and so yeah, it takes a strong leader to come in and align everything. So let me ask you this question: in hopes of doing that, they've got this title called the Director of Sales and Marketing,
Mm.
and in theory, that's a good idea, but I'm not sure it's a good idea in practicality. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen it work really badly in truth.
Yes, me too. More
Uh,
than often
yeah,
than not.
yeah, more often than not. But I've also seen, so titles like head of growth, head of sales and marketing. I think it takes a certain person who's worked across both disciplines to really, and also know how to manage a team. So it's about the hire and the person itself rather than the role. I do see the role being one that can be very successful for a company, but the person directing it, it's hard if she or he has a bias towards one way or another. That's
Yes,
always
it
going to
shows.
be a difficult. Exactly. So it's got to be someone who's had experience across both, who's been a salesperson and who's also been a marketing person, and has seen on both sides of the fence what it actually looks like. Because it's rarely ever one or the other. It's rarely ever marketing completely sucks and the funnel sucks, or that sales completely sucks. It's always in between, right? The leads might not be perfect, but the salespeople don't really know how to work the leads, and then the feedback doesn't go to marketing. It's almost always a combination of the two sides not fulfilling their full potential. So to have that person at the very top across both teams, they've got to really have solid experience in both disciplines to be able to impartially find where the leakage is actually happening.
So a couple of things come up. Is the first thought that comes up is they have ride-alongs with the police. If you're part of the community or an
Mm.
organization, you can ride in a cop car for like a night or a day or whatever. And that opens your eyes to the reality of policing as opposed to sitting in your office and judging what's going on. And it almost seems like what we need to do is to get some of our marketing people to go out on sales calls and actually observe what happens there in front of a customer and really get a, oh my God, okay, this is what it's like. And on the other side, I think sometimes marketing is sitting in their offices thinking up these things. And it would be really good to have a salesperson in the mix with them saying, that sounds good, but think about this. And I think that cross pollination really gets a much stronger organization and there's much better understanding. And also, when there's an issue that comes up, you've got bridges built between the two departments. So it's not like it's your fault. It's like, how do we solve this together? And I
Mm.
think that's where you can actually uh, outthink the competition.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things to do as a marketer who gets brought into companies and as a copywriter who gets paid, to write things that sell. I don't actually speak to marketing teams too much when I get started. I want to speak to sales because sales are the ones on the front line talking to the customers, handling the objections. They get to hear what people are unsure about. They get to, just really get to the core of it and talk to the customers day in, day out. And they're the ones with the golden nuggets that the marketing team or even an outside agency can really pick for and go, oh, this is really interesting. Tell me more about this. So with all the marketing that we build, I actually start from sales. And so I think it's almost crucial if you have already got an established sales team or an established marketing team to have new members from each team second or do a stint with the other team during their induction period. I think that's super important to actually get things right. Um, so I might ask you just quickly, actually, not to derail the
Sure.
podcast, but things look a little bit blurry on my side. Is my internet
Well,
okay,
so
or do
what's
you want me to
happening is
switch over?
this. What's happening is uh, it is a little blurry here, but what it's doing is recording you in HD on your computer, and it's recording me on HD on my computer in audio and
Gotcha.
video. So when we get to the end of this, it's going to beam both recordings up, and the end product's going to look
Awesome.
gorgeous.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure it's not my internet
So,
because Australia's
dear
got third world
editor,
internet.
when you see this, make sure you cut this out, or I'll be very angry if this goes out. No, Glenn's amazing. Glenn, edit this stuff out, and thank you for asking. If something comes up, share it. We can always edit it out later.
Awesome. Perfect. Cool.
So, Will, let's say you have a company with an app that's designed for salespeople on the front line, and what it's designed to do is keep them in the right mindset, no matter what's going on in the day. So if they're feeling like they don't want to pick up the phone, they can listen to a track that'll program to pick up a phone. Or if they feel
Oh.
like a lot of salespeople don't ask for the order, and they're going in, they can just listen to a track that'll force them to ask for the order all freaking day long. It'll just program their mind. So if we were launching that to sales departments, the CEOs going out, knocking on doors, what does that look like? Like, where would you send them first? Would it be like the auto industry, real estate? Where would you find a bunch of salespeople that could potentially buy this thing?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love that question. Because in reality, because I'm also doing sales for my business, I've already got that. I've already got that set of tracks that I listen to, where it's like I'm not feeling it, but I need to put food on the table. Listen to this and let's go close. You know what? I think there's two ways of thinking about this, right? For me, the first way is who needs this the most? Like, what are the most I don't know if cutthroat is the right word for it. What are the most competitive industries that a
Right.
salesperson can work in? And yes, real estate definitely. Yes, the auto industry definitely.
Stocks.
Insurance, stocks, financial services, all of those industries where you've got to be on your game to make money. And if you don't get the sale, you don't get paid. Those would be, I would do an outreach campaign into those industries, into salespeople, get them on a trial, and then turn them across to paying customers. If that's one way to, that's a very generalized way to do it. We can dive into a little bit more in detail. The second way, so action number two, is just to run ads to it and let the salespeople come to you and self-select. Right, run a Facebook ad, run a LinkedIn ad, target people who have got interest in sales, and say, "Hey, I've got this performance track that's helped all of my salespeople go out there and crush it. See if this helps you too." And people are going to self-select and go, "Oh, I'm a salesperson. I need this. Sure, would love to have a crack at this."
We've all had days where the down days, and kind of what at least from my point of view, I think if you take a look at all the days that are out there, let's turn this one off. Screw off. Bizarre. It was on silent, but it still rang through. Very bizarre. So, for salespeople, my hypothesis is that maybe 5% of days in a year, and that's probably overreaching, is where you wake up and you feel unstoppable. You're just in the mood, and it's just like any conversation, you're going to get a yes. Then you've got 80 days that you are going to be 80% of the days you're going to be just average, and then there's probably 20 some odd days, 20% of the days where you're just going to be down in the dumps. And the question is, how do you take
Yep.
80% of the days and move some of them over into super mindset days, and take a lot of the bad days and turn them into average days?
Mm.
Is kind of where I think a solution like that would help, is to get you more
Yep.
productive days out of it. So would you say offering a trial is the best way? Hey, test it out for a week, test it out for a month. If you like it, buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Before we get into that, I'm actually curious about one thing, Emma. What do you have on your track before we jump into that? And we can go into so deep because I love talking shop in numbers. But before we dive into that, I love mindset side as well. What would you have on your track actually? What do you listen to?
So what I listen to is, and I'm asking this question because I'm at some point in the near future launching an app like that, and what it's got is it's me showing people how to tap into the power of the mind. So it's not music to inspire. It's like taking you through a process. I'll give you an example of one of the tracks.
Mm.
It's a lot of people come home, and when they come home, uh, they're physically there, but not mentally there. They're still back at work, fretting about problems or what they're going to do tomorrow. And even the family dog can figure out, hey, dad's not home. So someone comes home, before they get out of the car, they listen to a track for 6 minutes, 44 seconds, and it gets them to release the stress for the day. It gets them to remember the
Mm.
very first time they fell in love with a significant other, like feel it here. And then they walk into the
Wow.
house with that loving, warm feeling, and they just show up differently, fully present, with love in their hearts, even for the family pet. And so my mission is to really change the world and make it a happier place. And this has been a labor of love to kind of craft it. And I think salespeople need it the most in terms of,
Mm.
you know, business is probably the strongest force for creating change for good that we have. Like certainly some businesses do bad things, but most businesses, they provide jobs, build communities, build nations. I'd heard this story once. It was in Israel, uh, where they're doing business with the Palestinians. And when shit goes down, the Palestinians are protecting their partners because business is more important than not.
Mm.
And it builds relationships, it builds strength, it makes the world a better place. So, anyway, so I'll send you the app to play with. Let me know what you think. And so it's all
Yeah.
designed to, if you're not feeling uh, the magic today, in 7 minutes, you'll be freaking unstoppable.
That is amazing. You know, with something like that, first and foremost, it could be used so widely now, especially because people are actually working from home so much more. Like for example, we used to have an office where all of my team used to go in, and you know, every single day when you leave the office, that was like a trigger of like, hey, we're leaving work, let's leave it at work. But
Yes.
nowadays, you know, we work from home 90% of the time. The office is there,
Yep.
but we rarely go into it. Only once a month when we have a big meeting, right? So nowadays, it's like when I finish work at whatever time it is, and I walk out of my room, it doesn't have the same triggering effect or the habitual
Oh,
effect
yeah.
of, hey, phone's down, work down, the kids are here, let's go. So I think that'll be super helpful. And with an app like that, you know, normally I'm 50-50 on trials. I think sometimes when you do trials, you get a lot of tire kickers. So, you know, sometimes if we can avoid a trial, I'll actively steer my clients to avoiding that and just going into like a paid trial. So, for example, pay me $7 for a month, and after the first month, it's $30. But you know, you could do it like that, or you can even give them a free trial for 7 days. I think once people get into the habit of using it, they'll see the benefits. And the beauty of an app like that, you know, of an app that you're building, is that it's not just, hey, I'm going to take your app, use it, and then I'm good for the rest of the year. No, as a salesperson, as a business owner, I know that it's a constant battle with where your money's going, right? This whole business sales thing, I truly believe it is such a mental thing. When you look at the top salesperson in a company versus
Yes.
the bottom salesperson in the company, what's the difference? Like, and it's not experience, because some people just come in and they just blitz it. It's not experience. It's you know, yes, it's a little bit of product knowledge, but that's such a small percentage. The rest of it is the confidence, their focus, their drive, their determination, how hungry they are, you know, just how mentally prepared they are, the rituals, the habits they've got. And for an app like that, I mean, you could absolutely change someone's life, you know, instantly by giving them the right habits to become a successful salesperson. So, yeah, trial, get people on board, and then charge them. And you know, the value that you can create for a salesperson could be $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year,
Oh, yeah.
millions of
Could be
dollars a
huge.
year. Yeah, so I mean, you know, what you're putting out to the world versus the payment for an app, I mean, it's disproportionate in terms of value.
So let's talk about, tell us about one of your clients. You can change the name to protect the innocent, uh, and walk us through what you did for them so we get a really good sense of what you do for customers.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk about one of my clients here in Australia, but they are international now. So they're a unicorn story. Recently raised about $500 million, yearly revenue of about 100 mil. And we were very fortunate with them, by a massive stroke of luck, to work with them at a very early stage where their team was significantly smaller. They had 3 or 4 salespeople. The marketing team was one and a half. So
Mhm.
2 people. One of them was kind of part time in different departments, and so they just raised a lot of money. And so they turned around and said, "Look, we've got great brand reputation. We've invested a lot into our brand. We're growing organically, but we need to drive this forward. Like, what do we do?" And so we work with them at the very beginning to lay out a plan, right? How do you hit these revenue targets, and what strategies you need to use to do that? And a lot of companies at the very early stage, because they don't have the background in marketing, they think they've got to do this fancy stuff. But it literally was about, let's send a bunch of cold emails, send really, really, really good cold emails. And I think if there's anything that we do well, that we're world class in, it's actually writing really good cold emails that people love getting and responding to. So that was the core of our strategy. They were going on a massive hiring spree of salespeople, and as part of the KPIs from the sales team is that the marketing team sends a certain number of cold emails per salesperson, and the salesperson had to follow up with every single lead. So that was a major KPI across both teams, and that's how the teams got brought together, because marketing were responsible for feeding sales, and sales were responsible for getting back to marketing. So that was, core strategy number one. Core strategy number two was database building. So you don't need to get fancy with, like 20-step funnels with fancy terms like tripwires and all that kind of stuff. It literally was about, let's put some good value into the world, and what do our customers want to learn? Even if it's got nothing or very little to do with what we're doing, let's give them value and get them onto our database, and then talk about what we do well. Because eventually, if they want to do this big thing, they'll need our product to do it anyway. So even though our product is a very small part of their ultimate goal, right? It's still an important part. So why don't we help them with the big part and bring them back to the small part? So we ran LinkedIn ads for them, Facebook ads, Google ads. We built a bunch of landing pages, all of the typical marketing stuff. We just really simplified it and just did volume. So, when I first started my career as a marketer, I went after the fancy stuff. But nowadays, with the bigger companies we work for, the growth rate that they're achieving, I truly believe it is about just doing the simple fundamental things really, really well, and just doing more of it. And that's scale. So this client, they went from, I think when they started working with us, they were probably doing about 10, $20 million revenue a year. And now they're just grown exponentially, $100 million revenue, raised $500 million. They've gone from strength to strength, but the underlying principles of the marketing and how they feed the leads has stayed the same.
All right, so let's kind of step back on this. So you said cold emails. So you get an email list from a broker, or do you guys generate it yourselves?
We actually build everything in-house. We've tried a whole bunch of brokerages. It's never worked well. The leads are either stale or they've been hammered 50,000 times. So we actually built algorithm and code, and I've got a team of about 20 people offshore that sit there and just actually put a human lens to the data that we're getting. So we actually build this from scratch for every single client that we work with.
Brilliant. So you've got this cold email, and do you send them out one at a time, or do you do like a MailChimp or an email marketing system?
Yeah, so we actually use a system called quickmail.io. And I wouldn't recommend using like a MailChimp or an Active Campaign or those type of systems, because they are meant for warm leads coming in, or leads that you've actually gone out and either purchased or brought in. Quickmail is a brilliant system developed by a good friend of mine, specifically for cold outreach. So what it does is it automates the process of you having to send the emails. You put an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV into Quickmail with all the contacts you want and all the merge fields. So we actually really personalize every single email, but we put the personalization into the Excel spreadsheet, and then we load the email templates that we want to send, right? So we load the sequences and put the fields in there, and the system takes the information, plugs it into the emails, and so every single email that goes out is very personalized. And that's where we win, right? Like we get open rates of 80%, reply rates of 40% because we go so deep with the personalization, but the system helps us automate the actual sending. So whether someone replies or we get an out of office or they click unsubscribe, the system handles all of it, and we just focus on putting good leads into the system itself.
And so does that go out on your email address, or do you have a temporary one? Because I know if you get too many unopens and stuff, it can start blacklisting emails. So how do you handle that?
Yep. So we actually build our own email servers that we use for clients. So we've got clean email service sitting there that we keep a very close eye on. And whenever we've got a client come on board, we'll buy a separate domain for that client that looks very similar to their actual domain. And we'll get the domain to send via our servers out to the world. So that way we can control the quality of the emails being sent out. We can control the servers, make sure that they're not being blacklisted. That's how we get as many emails into inboxes as possible. That's probably the most important thing. And number one thing for us is not getting into the spam folder, into the promotions tab. The more emails you can get into someone's actual inbox, the higher chance of success you'll have.
So are you using plain text emails, or do you put HTML and other fancy stuff in there?
So we stay away from links and images as much as possible. We do have sequences where it works really, really well. So, for example, when we decode emails for ourselves, I like to push the boundaries. I like to be a little bit cheeky, and I'll put GIFs in there and all this kind of fun stuff, but only on the third or the fourth or the fifth email in that sequence. The first and the second, we want to maximize email delivery. So we minimize the links and images because they tend to get flagged sometimes. If you've got too many, they'll get flagged by spam bots or servers and things like that, and you won't get it into inboxes. But the third email, if it hasn't got through already, why not try it?
So even on the first and second email, you'd have at least one link to get them to where you want to send them, right?
No. So we don't. So when we do emails, generally my primary objective is to get a reply. So to get a reply and say, yeah, sure, I'd like to get what you're talking about. If it's a lead magnet, for example, or sure, I've got 10 minutes. I'm happy to have a chat with your team. I don't really like to send people off from the emails because it's harder to track what they do afterwards. So I tend to go straight for the reply from the email.
And so you'd basically ask them, hey, just let us know what you'd like to do, kind of thing at the end?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. The second thing you were talking about was, building that database and then certainly advertising on LinkedIn, Google, Facebook. So talk to me about LinkedIn advertising. How effective is that? And what's the strategy to best use it?
Sure. So LinkedIn is expensive on the front end. And what I mean by that is, for example, if we're running a campaign and we're testing Facebook versus LinkedIn, if we're getting a lead for $3 to $5 on Facebook, it'll be triple to 5 times the amount on LinkedIn. So we would probably pay between $9 to $25 or $30 for the same lead, not the same lead, I should say, for a lead on LinkedIn. But the lead quality on LinkedIn is generally a little bit better than the lead quality on Facebook. And we verify that by having sales teams behind it. So one of the most important things that we do is we're actually building out a sales team that will help our clients book meetings. And what we're finding is when we call leads from Facebook, most of the time they don't pick up, or sometimes they're like, I don't remember, like, who are you? Whereas on LinkedIn, we get a higher response rate, a higher pickup rate, a higher conversation rate. So even though you're paying more, the lead quality tends to be a little bit better on LinkedIn ads. Obviously, this is for B2B. If it's B2C, stick with Facebook. Facebook is still by far and large, where you should be focusing a lot of your budget. But at the same time, I'm kind of platform or channel agnostic. I go where the attention is. I don't really care. I'm not tied to Facebook. I'm not married to the idea. We've got to be Facebook. We've got to be LinkedIn. It's like, where's your audience? Let's find your audience. Even if it's not on LinkedIn or Facebook, what newspapers are they reading? What websites are they browsing? Can we go and place a native ad on a website? I literally just go where I know our people are, and that's where we do the advertising.
Brilliant. So one of the things I look for is a phrase or that's global. So one of the phrases that's global is, they got different renditions of this, which is, the cobbler's son has no shoes. Have you heard of this?
I have, yep.
So you guys are, experts in marketing. So how do you become true to yourselves and you actually practice what you preach? Because it's so easy to focus on your clients and not focus on yourselves. So how do you balance that?
Well, this is such a great question, and it's actually top of mind for me right now because we're at the stage where we've grown very much through word of mouth, very much for organic, and very much through the principle of that phrase where we just haven't done any of our own marketing. But we're at the point where if we want to scale, if we want to keep growing, we have to focus on that. So that's had my full attention over the past couple of weeks. So I'll go into what we're doing in terms of our strategies, right? And I think what we've got planned will probably help us to double this year quite easily. So my thinking around this marketing, given what I've seen from clients and everyone else we work with, is that simplicity always wins. Simplicity and value and frequency equals scale. So what I mean by that is we're not doing fancy stuff for ourselves. We're not building all these funnels and stuff like that. It's just not what I want to do. We've got one funnel that we've built, and what it does is we've got a value on the front end, which I'm going to be putting up some email templates that people can download. So if you're in the B2B space, go get those email templates, and then you'll see a page. The next page would be, hey, thank you so much. Here's some extra resources, right? So I'm going to give them webinars that we've done in the past, other resources, conversations I've had with other people, which are interesting. And at the very end, it's like, if you want to have a conversation, here's my calendar, go and book in. But I don't push that heavily because, the growth rate that we've got a certain capacity. We can't take on 50 clients a month because we just can't handle that. I've actually purposely slowed played this. So for me, it's an exercise in database building. So every single month now, when they're on my email list, every single week they're going to get an email from me, which is entertaining and educational, right? A good mix of both. We're going to run a webinar to our list only every single month. So we're not going to try and advertise outside of our list. Literally, this webinar is for the email list for my social media following, and that's it. And every once in a while, every month, I'll have an email that goes out and says, do you want me to work on your emails? We've got X number of capacity this month. If so, come through and have a conversation with me. So that's my entire marketing plan. We're going to do cold emails as well, but obviously cold emails with the purpose of building that same email list and driving value, building relationships, and just having a long-term view of how we're going to grow. I don't want a million conversations tomorrow. I want a million conversations spread over the next 3 to 4 years.
Brilliant. So as you build that out, what are your thoughts on Facebook groups? Because this is the whole movement of, build your pond, stock your pond, and fish in your pond. Thoughts on that?
I think it's a nice to have. When it comes to marketing tactics, what's working now, I've seen everything work. So you'll never hear me say, oh, that just doesn't work, because someone out there's made it work. I think it always comes down to who your audience are, how they like to consume, what platforms they're on, and is it worth doing in terms of effort versus reward. So for myself, we're purposely not going to have a Facebook group because I know that the clients we're working with, people who own 10, 20, 50, $100 million businesses, they're not likely to be on Facebook every single day.
Right. Agreed.
So I'd rather not go through and spend the time and effort doing that because I just don't think the return is going to be there for us. And I don't want to have a full-time team member managing content, managing engagement in the group, because the people we're working with just aren't going to be, oh yeah, let's jump into the group and pump each other up. They're already they're going. They just need extra help, extra guidance in here's how you tune your marketing. So for me, it's not worthwhile doing. But that being said, I've seen clients we've worked with where we've built Facebook groups for them, and it's been phenomenal. So it really comes back to, would my people use something like this? Can I build a pond for my fish? I don't know. It's a weird way of saying it, but will my audience appreciate this? And if so, honest, is it worth doing? And I think there's a matrix out there called the ICE matrix, which is, I don't remember what the I stands for now. Oh, no, sorry, impact, complexity. This is really bad. I should remember what it stands for. But ICE is essentially, you look at the impact, this action is going to have on your business, how complex it's going to be, how expensive, or, difficult it's going to be to do. And then you give them a number and you can rate it. So I'll recommend doing that for every single tactic you're thinking of. And for me, Facebook groups, we thought about it, but it just doesn't make sense in terms of the impact it has on the business.
All right. Brilliant. So I like the strategy of, building the database, giving value. It's challenging not to put a link in because it's almost like a compulsion that we always do that. But I think doing the first two to just add value and see if they self-volunteer to come in. So you've been doing your business for how long?
So I think this is we just ticked over our 6th year. I think April is when I officially gave my notice and went full time. So this is year number 6 for us.
Brilliant. So if this Will went back 6.5 years ago to younger Will getting ready to start his business in 6 months, what one piece of advice would you give young Will that would actually make that journey easier?
That's a good question. I might cheat and go 2 because the first thing I would say for myself, and this might not apply for founders and business owners who are already in business, but the first thing I would say is just to stay in your corporate job a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
So I came from corporate IT, hated my job, was looking for any way to get out, and jumped a little bit too early. I think I could have cut 2 or 3 years off the path to where we are now if I'd just gritted my teeth and got through another 6 to 12 months. That would have been a lot faster because I would have made better decisions, had more money to reinvest into the business, and grown it a lot faster that way. So I think the number one advice is just bear with it for another 6 months and just grit your teeth, get through it, and that's going to have an exponentially great effect going into the future.
Okay.
I think the second piece of advice I would have, and this is something that I did well anyway, but I think just to reemphasize something that worked was just build a network and just talk to people, not with the idea of selling to people, but just the ideas are everything, right? The more you can learn about a market or an industry, the more markets and industry that you talk to and see, the more ideas you get. And the more ideas you get, the more opportunities come your way. And opportunities eventually lead to dollars. So I think, very early on, I went too far down the path of I work with chiropractors, I work with this group, just because that's what the courses were teaching. Whereas if I just taken time and just, given myself another 6 months and just said, look, I don't know who I'm working with, but let me go and see who I actually genuinely like talking to, and then go and figure out what problems they've got, and then build a problem for that audience set. That would have been a much more effective way of doing that.
Actually, thank you very much for sharing that, because that also showed like a vulnerability of, okay, I didn't know what I was doing, and it kind of comes back to this evil word called patience, which is like so important and so hard to do, because in my psychology, it's like, okay, we're going to do this. Okay, done enough thinking. Let's start executing. And oftentimes it's gone down a path that's been, somewhat successful, but nowhere close to the effort that was put into it. And having that patience to really figure out where do we fit in, who can we help the most, would have served us better. And I think, dear viewers and listeners, take this advice. And even if you're in a business right now, before you go down the path, treading water for a little while and rethinking the business. Like a good example was that Facebook question I asked is like, what's the effort versus reward equation? And is that going to justify it? Because you can get seduced by the act of doing. The act of doing gives you the
Mm,
illusion of accomplishment. And accomplishment in business is how much money you make for the shareholders.
yeah, I would also add to that, Iman. I would say I think the best entrepreneurs and business owners I know, they figured out a way to balance that, because I'll be a little bit careful about going too much to the other side as well, because I'm sure we both know people who are great thinkers, and they think and they think and they think, and then 5 years passes and all they've done is thought and they haven't taken action.
Yeah.
One of my great friends and client of ours, they've got an amazing business. They help people outsource, and they run this amazing BPO, thousands of clients, all of that kind of stuff. One of the catchphrases which has made a massive impact on me is massive imperfect action. Because, for me, I was so low in confidence. I was a massive introvert. I needed that doing, right? Putting myself out there, talking to the people. I needed to do that before I did thinking time, because if I didn't take the action, I would have scared myself. So I think it's that balance that you've got to find. But nowadays, I've gone too much the other way, where I'll throw an idea and I'm like, hey, team, I'm executing this, and it's done. And my team are like, oh my God, Will, shut up. you,
Yeah.
you've just gone way too far the other way. So it's almost about striking, but like, at a certain stage, I think for me at the very beginning, if I know what I know now, it's easy to say, have patience and do this. But at the same time, looking back on it, I think I needed to take the massive imperfect action to have the confidence to do something with. So a book that's really helped me understand this. It's a book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham, who
Mm-hmm.
was a billionaire, went bankrupt, and built himself back to billionaire. So you know that he didn't fluke it. And his whole premise is the idea of taking thinking time. So for me, it's like I want to be able to do a thinking time session every single day, but off the back of the thinking time, I have to take action. Like I can't just think and then, oh, congratulations, pat myself on the back for thinking. No, you've got to take action off the back of your thinking and take action and do something, even if it's imperfect. Like don't let perfect be the enemy of great. That's something else that the balance between those two things, I think, is where you'll find success.
Brilliant. Will, what makes you happy?
Oh, I think for me, it's a question I'm trying to figure out as well. Because in business, there's moments where, obviously I wake up and I'm like, let's burn this to the ground. I don't want to do this for another day. But then on some days I wake up and go, how did I get like, this is amazing. It's unreal. Like I'm living my dream life. I think for me, happiness is being able to move forward and seeing progress and being able to do the things that I'm good at. Not necessarily the things that I enjoy, but the things that I'm good at, and also finding things that I'm not good at and seeing improvement.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it's a great question because it's something that I've kind of not struggled with, but I've grappled with in my mind internally for the past year or so, especially as we've hit this level of success where, it's like I live an extraordinary life, but what am I trying to do? Like, what's the point of doubling the business? So it's something
Yeah.
that I've been grappling with, and I think it is progress. I think it's a journey, enjoyment in the journey, not worrying about the numbers, but just surrounding myself with good people, doing great work for them, just seeing the progress in things that I'm good at and also that I'm not good at. I guess is my answer.
Brilliant. So one of the things that one of the areas of focus for me is that ultimately at the end of the day, it's the more authentic you are as a human being, the more powerful you are in the world. The problem is most people don't know who they are, what their purpose is, and why they're here, and all those fundamental things that we take for it's not that important, or one day I'll figure it out. But I think what happens is when you uncover your purpose in life, it gives you a direction, and you can put a goal on that direction, and then every fiber of your being attacks that goal. Even if it's a crap day, you feel superb because you're doing what you were meant to do. The second
Mm,
thing is our deepest values, and more importantly, the criteria that our heart and mind uses to validate whether we're actually fulfilling those values or not. Knowing that gives you a rock solid foundation that allows you to get the grit you need to keep on going. So you got purpose gives you direction and motivation. Values give you the grit to keep going. Then
mm,
is fundamentally finding those mental blocks that stops you from executing, finding and removing those. And then the last step is really igniting the passion within and realizing how can I get it into my optimal mode. And the reason you can do it faster is you know where you're heading, you know where the goal is, you know your integrity, and you know all
mm,
the fears and the limitations are gone. And this is how you get a good executive and make them like a freaking beast, is not through external stuff, it's all internal. And I think that's one of the
right.
journeys that uh, entrepreneurs and leaders need to go through. And once they do that, there's the business before and the business after that transformation. And it doesn't need to take a long time to do that. Any thoughts, comments on that
Mm.
kind of hypothesis?
Wow, that's really deep. That's I haven't thought about it like that before. That's a really interesting way of looking at it, and I think it's a good framework for processing this because, to be honest, I think for me so far, and it's something I'm going to have to think about going into the future as we start hiring executives and building out our entire leadership team. It's things like that, right? What's going to drive the rest of the leadership team? Because it's a lot easier when it's your business,
Yes.
right? Because obviously, if you lose motivation, you stop paying yourself. That's a painful thing.
Oh,
Whereas when
yeah.
you start hiring executives and a leadership team, it's a little bit different. They've got a paycheck. How do you motivate them beyond? So that's a framework I'm going to have to, and I really like the framework that you've got. And I think I'm going to steal that and adapt that. But for me, as the owner, I mean, I think for my mindset, it's kind of like this, and it's a bit of a nihilist kind of approach, right? And I just look at it and go, look, I don't know what the hell happens after I die, after I pass away. Um, I think nothing because I've been not alive before
Mhm.
and I don't remember it. So, you know, who the hell knows? But we've got one life. And for me, this one life is so precious. And I want to be spending a life doing stuff. And, people talk about legacy, but man, stuff legacy. Like, who's going to remember what the hell I've done after my
Right.
grandkids? Like, no one, right? There's people who've been, absolutely changed the world. And all that happens is people talk about them in passing. Like, who cares? So for me, I don't care about legacy beyond having awesome kids, raising them right, spend the right time and quality with them, and then obviously by extension when I have them grandkids. But that's the extent of legacy that I care about. So if I don't care about legacy beyond the next two generations, then for me it's like, well, but knowing that I've got this one life and one shot to do some freaking amazing things, well, then why wouldn't I have the best life ever, right? Why wouldn't I fly first class everywhere? Why wouldn't I go to explore the entire world? Why wouldn't I network and hang out with people that I love and who are doing cool things and who are driven and that motivate me and want me to be better? So for me, it's just kind of like, you know, to motivate myself, it's all about maximizing this one opportunity, one shot that we've been given that's fleeting. And that's, every second that's going by, it's 1 second less that we've got in this existence. So why wouldn't I want to jam pack it for the coolest stuff that I can do with the most
Right.
amazing people I can surround myself with and just enjoy the ride? So for me, that's my motivation. And, to do that, obviously you need money. So the
Yes.
money is a means to an end. It's a means to being able to network with the coolest people, being able to, take my family on cool experiences. And so for me, I can tie the business and the sales and all of that back to the ultimate goal of, hey, I want to go and take my family to the Maldives this year, and do these experiences while we're there. What does that look like? So let's go and build that into my plans for the business this year.
Brilliant. So,
So,
just as you build your company out, let me give you some advice on how to do that.
yes,
Because
please.
ultimately, at the end of the day, what happens is you've got a company, it's fairly successful, and then you're growing it, and then the consultants come in. And then it's like, okay, what are the values that we want for this company, and how do we define who we are? And you can go all across the world in companies and go in boardrooms, and you'll see on the wall, we are dedicated to the betterment of the environment, our employees, and our customers, and or some other BS like that. And what we really need
Mm,
to do is to get the essence of the owner. What are the core values that are important to that human being, and map those out to the company? Because then that person can be the authentic role model as opposed to trying to be something they're not. The criteria that they use for their
mm,
values ends up what we reward our employees on. So if it is going above and beyond and an employee does that for a customer, the stories that we capture become the folklore of the company, and they take a concept and make it real. And the last thing I'll share with you
mm,
is people will do more for each other than they'll do for you, the boss. If only we get the
mm,
right belief system and the culture in the organization. And the best way to think about that is a simple piece of paper. I remember
mhm.
an experiment that we did when I was in elementary school. Uh, uh, we got a magnet, put it down, put a piece of paper on top of it, and we sprinkled iron filings on the piece of paper. And as soon as they hit the paper, they moved to the lines of
Yep.
flux. So those iron filings are the behaviors and the attitudes of your employees. The
Mm,
paper is the company that you've built, and the magnet underneath is the culture that drives it. And what happens is, if we don't have the right culture, we get a consultant that comes in and says, okay, stop doing this behavior. We're going to take this iron filing and move it over here. This is what we're doing now. This is a better way. But as soon as you let go, it slides back to where it used to be. So what we fundamentally need to do as owners of companies is realize that we're in the belief business. How do we identify the limiting beliefs in the organization, and how do we transform those? And if we get the magnet right, then we attract people to our company that go, you know what? I'm never going to leave this place because I've found home. And it's not about the owner. It's about each other and growing something freaking awesome. And when you do that, it allows you to focus on the three most important things that you should be focusing on. The first one is that it basically, let's go here. What it does is you should be focused on kick-ass amazing vision, which I know you got in spades. 2 is building a kick-ass amazing culture that people will die to work at. And 3 is long-term shareholder value. And at some point, you need to step up to that position and get out of the day-to-day operations. And you can only do that when everybody else is committed and behaving in the way that they want. And I'll get off my sermon because I've got passion around this, because I think it's like important that we realize it's our personal beliefs and our organizational beliefs that build kick-ass amazing companies.
You know what? That's awesome. And I think by chance, I've lucked my way into having the first two. So just to touch on that point, we do have in our offices, when we used to have the office and everyone used to go in, on the wall as you go in, our slogan was "Do good shit for good companies and good people." And so that was the premise of everything, that we only work with people with great products that change the world. And we go out of our way to dedicate ourselves to our clients because they're doing cool stuff. And so our impact is the impact we have on these businesses, and we help them, so we're exponentially having a great impact in the world by helping these great companies, right? So sorry for the swearing. We're an Australian company, so swearing is part of our DNA.
It's normal, yeah. Let's have a Foster's.
Yeah. So it's just like whenever anyone came in, it was just like, do good stuff for great company, like do good stuff for good companies. And I think that's our motto. And I think my team, I've been lucky to have amazing team members. We literally have not had anyone voluntarily leave the company in more than 3 years, because we're so dedicated to the work and we see the work we're doing having such a big impact in the world. But the last bit is definitely where it's missing, with the shareholders coming in and being able to extract myself from all of that. But hey, we're working on that. But I think your framework, I love your frameworks, Emma. Like they're so cool. So I'm going to take the one that we around vision. I'm going to take the one around the company vision, the culture, and the shareholders. And it's definitely going to be something that we adapt in the near future.
Brilliant. Just before we part company, what is one mind hack you'd like to share with our viewers, listeners, that would allow them to be more productive, more efficient, happier, get better dates, whatever it is?
Oh, I think knowing where you're at in the journey and what you need to motivate you. So what I mean by that is, when I was we struggled in the business for so long, like 2.5 years. We, barely made the payments on the house, all that kind of stuff. When I was going through that, I drove the crappiest car, couldn't afford to eat out or do any of that kind of stuff. So every time I hopped into my car, I imagined myself driving a brand new Porsche, right? I'd imagine in my mind getting in the color of the seatbelt. Every time I had to fly economy on the cheapest airlines, I imagined I was in business class on the top airline in Australia. I put myself into the mental headspace where I was already successful. That was my little hack, and I used to go out and during the day and just pretend like I'd been given free reign to hang out at the beach because it was free, but pretend like, oh, my business works so well that I get to do this.
Nice.
So that was, when I was struggling, that really helped me get through a lot of the dark times in my mind, knowing that I had achieved already what I was working towards, and it was just a matter of time catching me up to where I was. Funnily enough, now that I've gone and bought the Porsche and done all of this kind of stuff, traveling business class, for me, my mental hack now is peace of mind and not having mental baggage. So for me, it's actually offloading all of the stuff that I thought used to be cool and going back to just a simple car that I don't care where I live. I don't care if it gets dented or a kid
Isn't
opens
that
their car and
interesting?
dents my
Yeah.
car. It's like, I don't need that. I've gone for the fancy stuff. I had my flex. Let's get rid of it and get me back to just like an ordinary Toyota that I can just live anywhere, get sand all over and take surfing and just not even care about. And so so it went from having possessions to now for me, it's like minimalism and just being free to have experiences it's my mental goal right now. So I think it depends on where you are in the journey.
Absolutely. And I think had you not dreamed the big dreams to get what you wanted to get, if you went, I just want to do good work, there's a good chance you would not have made it at the same level of success. So you use that carrot to get you where you needed to go. And now you don't need it. So you can go and build the next phase, which is more about being rather than doing. Will,
Hmm.
a delightful conversation. 55 minutes went by like that, my friend. And hopefully this is the first of many conversations.
This has been so fun. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been amazing. I've learned so much from you just in this conversation as well. So selfishly, thank you so much.
Thank you.